All right. So today I have Dr. Dan Taylor again, like probably one of my best friends. And he's currently work with Joe Gibbs Human Performance as a director of strategy development and global partnership. So talk to me about this role, because I know you were a sports science guy at
Yeah.
director of sports science at Charlotte Hornet, and now you changed it to like Joe Gibb.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, first of all, appreciate you having me back on, E. And likewise, you're one of my favorite people, and even off camera, off recording, we have great conversation. So, likewise, in terms of the friendship, and to run it back with you is great. Yeah, it's interesting. It's a career pivot because, as you know, and what I said last time I was on here is that my background is all in sort of physical development into objective sort of markers into sports science and so on. And then now I'm pivoting sort of massively into this strategic development and partnerships role. So basically, where I work is um, cutting edge biomechanics lab on a NASCAR site, which we may have talked about. I can't remember last time. But this role itself ends up being, again, the two pieces of it is strategic development. So a piece of it is business development. In truth, because it's sort of like a startup kind of feel, even though it's supported and funded by a race team, we're all kind of developing the business. So the strategy around it, excuse me, the strategy around the development to me is more about getting people to understand what this unique and magnificent tool that we've built is. Again, massive biomechanics, 87 force plates in the ground, 48 motion capture cameras, multiple services. So it's this crazy, audacious thing. But you and I could talk about it from a physical development perspective, what it is that we're doing in there, what you can take away. But there's also billionaire owners that are going to be writing checks. What are they going to get from it? What does the coach get from it? So there's this avenue of like being able to articulate the science and the application of it to multiple key stakeholders. So that's where I feel like the strategy is a little bit. So again, true business development, absolutely, but the strategy around using the tool. And then the other bit, which you and I talked about, off the recording, is this global partnerships part of it, which is, fundamentally part of the sales piece of it, which is what it is. But for me, it really hangs on the partnership part of it, because if you're going to bring a novel technology or a group of technologies into the field and be a disruptor from the sort of like normal wave. You need good partners. You need people who understand this. You need people who are interested in it. You need people who have like the foresight of why it's important, but the patience to help grow it. So that has been a lot of fun, is kind of talking and meeting those people. And like I told you, on a sort of like self-serving level, I obviously love people and I enjoy talking to people. And I had a good basketball and kind of college sports network, which is great. But what it's also done in this partnerships position is allowed me to talk to people across sports technology in the US, in Canada, internationally. And that's just great network wise, because as you know, that's important just in general. But then secondly, it's people's ideas and people's circumstances and what challenges they have and what, soccer looks like in Europe versus MLS over here. And, so it's a nice way of kind of like strategizing around this unique tool and meeting people across the board. And that has been very fulfilling to this point.
Nice, nice. So like like we talked before, like a lot of the coaches when they change job from job to job,
Yeah.
switch job to job, they still like to probably do the same thing like coaches, they still want to be strength coaches.
Mhm.
Sports scientists, they still want to be sports scientists. So what make you choose this like different
Yeah. No,
position?
this is a good question. I wasn't ready for this one. So yeah, so it's an interesting question because I think, this is a hard profession. I mean, let's just start at the beginning. It's very rewarding, but from the point of view of like helping people develop something and win championships, whatever it might be. So it's very rewarding profession. Most people that get into it tend to be people. And most people, this is very much from the strength and conditioning side of things, but just sort of in general, like the coaching part of it. And, it sort of appeals to people who want to help people. It's kind of like, not a lot of people get into strength and conditioning for money, for example, right? So the problem is, though, it's a very saturated field. Everybody in today's world works out a little bit. So therefore, everybody thinks they know your job. And it could be really conflicting between, people who assume to know what you do. They're the ones who are hiring you potentially or are a part of hiring. And so it just is really, really difficult. So it's this kind of like juxtaposition between really rewarding job can be really, really hard. The other thing, which is always talked about, and you and I may have discussed it at some point, is you are also hired and fired, and it isn't necessarily based on what you've provided. You could be the best strength and conditioning coach, sports scientist, data analyst in the country, hands down, whatever your markers are. But you have a bad cycle of games. You lose enough. Fans get sick of the coach. Funding changes, and you get let go. So it's this very interesting job and jobs where you're not necessarily valued for what you bring to the table. The people who hire you don't necessarily know what you do or how to evaluate what you do. But again, you're drawn to it because you want to help. So the reason I'm staging it all like that is I think sometimes because we come in with this warm, fuzzy feeling for the industry, we don't necessarily look at it for what it is. Like, I think you have to be honest with yourself and honest with the industry. You need to stay ahead of the firing curve a little bit and kind of be aware of what's going on and not kind of like, oh, it's not going to happen. It's going to be fine. Like, just you got to be aware constantly of what's going on because it's an ever shifting landscape. The other thing, which I think gets to your question really more than me laying the table here, is because we don't tend to hire each ourselves, it's other people that hire us. There is this sort of like ceiling that has happened traditionally of, people will come in as like an assistant, maybe like an intern, assistant strength coach. I'll just use a strength coach track for an example. Maybe they become a head person, but there's always an AD or someone above them. Now, in a few places, there is ADs who are strength coaches. That is true, and that is something that has changed. But typically, it isn't always that person. Or if you're a data analyst, like there's a certain person who's hiring you that may not be a data guy. They're just looking for a data guy. So the reason, again, I'm trying to say all this is that I think there is more growth in us as practitioners than I think we realize. We can do way more things than I think we're aware of because we run groups of people every day as a weight room. So we're managing rooms, we're managing interns. We are always brought into the interview process because we're people. Go get Eric, bring him in, and it's like I'm not even part of this particular group. Nope, you go with people and force plates, bring him in. So we're always involved in this stuff. So I think what I would like people in the industry to think about, particularly as they come to the ranks, is that you can be and do more. Like shoot to be a great strength and conditioning coach. But life is going to change on you, hiring and firing, but you're going to get married, have kids. You're going to not want to travel as much, whatever it might be. You can become an administrator. You can be, there's all kinds of things. There's a few examples that have popped up recently, which I think is impressive, where Corey Schlesinger's at one, where he's back in the NBA now, but was in the NBA, was a college strength coach in a few places at Stanford, goes to Phoenix, has a great run at Phoenix. He ends up going to Texas for a year, and he got an AD title, or excuse me, it was a coaching title.
Yeah.
And I forget his exact title, but it was like morphing strength and conditioning into coaching, which also is a few things. It gives you a different level of influence. It puts you on a whole different track as it relates to HR and all the things. And you probably get paid more money because now you're in their cycle. There's an example. Now he took a different route and he used that, again, thinking about growing and moving. And he got a different level of director position in the NBA. So he's an example. Molly Benetti is another great example I always cite, where she's an unbelievable strength and conditioning coach at University of South Carolina, but she's also doing business related things. So she's growing a business outside of her success. Now, some people are going to say, keep the main thing the main thing. 100%. You're going to get fired if you don't. But you're also going to get fired if you do, because it's not on you. So I think you need to sort of like understand that there's so much more to us as practitioners. Same thing in the medical side of it, same thing in the data side of it. Technical people run the world from an infrastructure perspective, right? So if you're a technical person, know that you know your worth and move around. So I think to kind of get to the crux of this question, because I know this is a long answer, I think basically my whole thing is that, again, there's more to you, but also there's more in the field that you can grasp at. if more of us are willing to take those levels up, then you're going to have people coming up out of college to do what we do who are going to stop being hired by people who understand strength and conditioning and understand athletic training or whatever it might be. But you have to make that jump and be willing to get into administration and be willing to pivot out of this stuff. The last thing I'll say too, which is a bit of a long conversation, so I'll keep this short because I know I'm going
No,
here,
you're good.
is I also think it's okay to rebrand yourself. Because what tends to happen is you get pigeonholed in certain things. Eric is a great strength and conditioning coach for track and field and does force plates. This is true. There's also many other things that are part of you. So you have to be willing to rebrand yourself. Now, how you rebrand yourself is there's many ways to do it. One would be an example of this would be when I used to work at the gym a million years ago. I was a personal trainer. And I knew I was doing way more than that. And I knew I had a bit more in me. And I was young, I was early 20s. I also knew that I wanted to get into college sports at some point, and it's hard to jump from personal trainer to strength coach. So I went into the office and said, "Look, you guys know I'm doing a lot here, like organizing stuff and kind of helping some of the new trainers out. I want to have a new title." And they said, "Okay, what do you want?" I said, "I want to be the assistant fitness director because there was one at the time." And they said, "Okay, how much do you want a pay raise? What do you want?" I said, "No," because I knew that wasn't possible. I go, "No, I just want a title change." And in doing so, I mean, obviously I had to eat some money, but in doing so, it changed anybody who came up to me's perspective of me. I was now an assistant fitness director. So the same thing is true, as you kind of navigate through your job is don't be afraid to rebrand yourself in different ways. I mean, my whole career is based on that. I was a personal trainer that became a strength and conditioning coach, that became a head strength coach, became a sports scientist, that became a development guy. You have to do the work to back up your pivots. So you can't just suddenly go, oh, I want to be a blah, blah, blah. And just because you choose to do that, you have to do the work. Like for me to become a sports scientist, I had to do a lot of understanding in areas of data I was poor with, in fundamental usage of technologies, and all the other things that you and I've talked about. So you have to do the work. So again, to answer your question, for me personally, I think we get very restricted in just doing one thing. Okay, you're a track and field strength coach, and that's it. So all of a sudden, your career path is very finite. There's way more to us. Two, I think we have to accept that and understand there is more that we can do, and it's sort of like duty bound that we do these things to move the industry forwards. Three, don't be afraid to rebrand yourself. Do the work to make sure the brand counts. Don't be afraid to rebrand yourself because you can move around. Because I heard Jeremy Bettle say this once, who was a long time strength coach and practitioner in multiple sports, and he runs a consulting business. I heard him on a podcast once, and he said that our positions as performance people, whatever you want to call that, we can work in all different areas. If you're a basketball coach, you can only be a basketball coach. If you're a strength and conditioning professional, as you know, you can work in multiple sports. Now, granted, we always have the one we love, but you can work in multiple sports. If you're a sports scientist, you can work in multiple sports. You can work in the private field. There's no end to what we can do. We just put blinders on ourselves. And again, for me personally, I've chose to ride the wave. I've chose to reinvent myself and rebrand myself numerous times, and I've tried to think and push the field forward as what is possible. And I hope that people will find some level of blueprint of what I've done that they can take for themselves. Long answer, E. I'm sorry, bro.
No, no, it's good. It's awesome. So that also lead me to the next question is like you've been in this industry for so long.
Yeah,
What keeps you like motivated? Like we talk about it this and you also mentioned this earlier. So there's like hiring, firing, all those stuff. We don't get to decide that. And
yeah,
it happens all the time like probably like the best of the best train coaches, they still get fired.
no
Like the
doubt.
best of the best, like athletic trainer, whatever, they still get fired. So what keeps you motivated and what like what keeps you stay passionate in our
Yeah,
field?
yeah. Yeah, it's a good question because it can be extremely disheartening, which can diffuse some of that stuff too. I think going back to what I said a bit earlier is once I'd really gotten my legs under me professionally in the college when I used to work in mid-major college, I'm very realistic about the field because I think in terms of the hiring and firing and the fragility of jobs and so on, because I think people I think people romanticize it a bit too much, and and I think that then you get lost in it, and then when you get hit with it, and when the bad side of the field comes in, it's so damning and so disappointing, and so like it just takes the wind out of your sails. Now, getting fired and having to figure out what to do with a wife and kids, I'm not saying you should just sort of like go, ah, it's this is what happens in the field. I don't mean that. I'm just saying I know that that can happen. You know what I'm saying? Like I'm not blind to what's happening. Because I think if there's a level of reality, again, with yourself and also the field, you can use that to make smart decisions. Okay. I also means that my I don't get diffused when bad things happen, even if it's not to me, but the people I care about and love. You know, I don't get like, oh, this is the worst thing. The other part of it, I think too, that keeps me motivated is um, I'm a really curious person by nature, which I think you and I have talked about. I think you and I, it's also I think where we've met a little
Yeah.
bit, like our personalities have meshed. So I find all kinds of things interesting. That relates to the world, history, you pick it, but in the field, across the field, which also I think to the point of rebranding and pivoting has made that possible for me. So, in keeping me passionate, when I've had times when I feel bogged down, I feel like I can't make the change that I want to, not necessarily with the athletes, but like with what's happening around me. I'll just move my attention to keep doing my job, but like, let me learn more about this. That's fascinating. Let me learn more about force plates and force plate analysis. Let me go down the rabbit hole of saliva testing. Let me understand leadership stuff more, and then I would be able to bring these different pieces of things that were interesting that weren't specifically my job into pieces of my work. And then the bit that I couldn't change that was kind of bumming me out, there was other things that I could do where I was like, well, let's try this. That's kind of cool. It would spark some interest in me. The other thing that I tended to do, which I'm not necessarily recommending for everybody, is when I felt like I was in a rut and I couldn't control my outcomes, whether it's professionally getting jobs or just feeling a little bit squashed at work, usually I would end up doing something that was like a formalized education. And it really, I guess, what my point behind that is that don't necessarily jump to formalized education. I'm just saying go and learn something new, which goes back to the curious bit, because it's going to keep you excited and enthusiastic. And then when you can break out of whatever the rut you're in, new job, new coaching staff, new whatever, now you're like flowing because you've learned this new stuff and it's part of your toolbox and things that work are good again. So I think that's been a big part of it for me too, is that I don't I keep moving to target, if that makes sense for myself. I think fundamentally I love and enjoy people, and it doesn't matter what you do. This is the people business, and people will let you down 100% and have done, but people will also bring you joy. And people will also kind of fill your cup. And I'm fortunate where I've had both sides of that. So I can lean on the fact that I know I'm having a bad day, and I'm not doing the things I want to do, but I've helped a handful of people get to the NBA from backgrounds that would have been hard to do. I mean, why wouldn't you be excited? The last bit I will say is, and you and I have talked about this too, in different ways, is if it is a point in time when you are unhappy, you are becoming unmotivated, might be unfair, but you're losing the luster for what you're doing. You have to leave. And that could be a painful reality because again, you may have to move. You may have to rethink or like me, repivot or pivot, excuse me, into something that isn't what you thought you would have been doing 4 or 5 years ago. But if you are being held back or again put in a box professionally where you can't grow, if you are unhappy to the point of depression, for God's sake, if you are all of those things, then you are in a unhealthy place for you mentally. You're in an unhealthy place for you professionally. Your job quality will suffer, and you're going to get fired. You know what I'm saying? So you're doing all this stuff to hang on for dear life, and I get it. I don't want to make blasé statements because I've had to move, like you've had to move. I mean, it's not. I don't want to be like this guy is just making it sound like it's easy. I'm not. I get it. I'm just saying if you are in that position and it is a dead end and you're hanging on for dear life, you're probably going to get fired anyway because you're just quality of what you're doing is off. So that doesn't necessarily keep me motivated, but I just think that you just need to know when your sell by date is. Because then you can, then once you get over the hump, which is what we were talking about, and this is me in this new role, you're gonna be enthusiastic again because you're going to feel like you're being respected and taken care of. You may pivot into something that's completely different and be like, "Oh my God, like this is like let me go back to my notes. Let me get back to my part. Like, well, this stuff's amazing." And all of a sudden it comes up again. So to go back to the beginning, I think, in staying motivated, I think it's about the people in the process, as corny as that sounds. And I think if you aren't as worried about like outcomes, you're worried about building process and taking care of people, you'll always stay motivated because those things will always be there and that travels, right? Secondly, I think, stay curious. Just stay curious because, again, when you feel locked down, there's other ways to thrive. Sometimes it's just in your head. You know what I mean? Instead of practice, but you can thrive. Like you can find avenues to go down and it will keep that flame burning. And then I do think, which goes back to be real about the business and in doing so, know when your sell by date is. Because if you're at a point when you are so unmotivated and so unhappy, get the hell out of there. It isn't worth it. There's other stuff in this world that you can do that you can make money and be successful at. And that will, once you've gotten through those gates, it will give you the flooding of being motivated again. And again, super, super lovely. And I know it's hard, but I'm telling you, I've seen it, I've lived it. I know people who have done it. Sometimes it's hard to see across the horizon, but the sun is there, I'm telling you.
Yeah, yeah. Like I think it's last summer. Like I don't know why. Like I know I saw all of a sudden like met all these like great strength coaches. They're like awesome, like
Mhm.
really great at what they're doing. But like a lot of them just get fired. I don't know
Yeah.
why. I met them last summer,
Yeah.
and so what happened to this guy is like he left our industry to do something on his own, like
Yeah.
with his family and business wise.
Yeah.
And then after 2 years left our industry, he come back.
Yeah. Bro,
Yeah.
but this is the other thing. And again, you and I could talk about all kinds of stuff and I know we will, but I do have this thing about rebranding and sort of reinventing yourself. The latter part of it is exactly what you just said, and you worded it so perfectly, is that sometimes you have to leave to come back. And the reason you have to leave to come back is motivation burnout, obviously. And sometimes, like I said, you just get pigeonholed. Like this is who you are. It's not. It's just who you think I am here. But if I leave, grow, blossom, add things to my toolbox. I'm not saying come back to the same school, the same. I'm just saying come back to the industry, come back to whatever. And I think I'll be a product of that. Like there's a good chance I could be where I'm at here forever. There's a good chance that in the right time, the right place, I will go back into some level of team sports, but it won't be doing the same thing because time and knowledge and all the things will come into play, but also because I pivoted to learn and grow and take care of my family, but I pivoted to learn and grow. So if I'm learning and growing, I can then input that back into where I come from. So you were 100% correct. And that I think also helps with motivation. Like I had this moment of epiphany. I think you and I talked about this before. I knew I was going to probably have to leave the NBA pretty much going into my third year, but definitely by the midway through it. And it was a lot to do with family stuff and a lot to do with like I didn't feel boxed in by any means, but I knew I had kind of hit the ceiling of what I wanted to do the way I wanted to do it. And to do the bigger things, I had to change it up. And I remember distinctly I was in Brooklyn. So big franchise, lots of money. And basically what I was doing pregame was putting chips on guys for like load monitoring pregame, but I was also helping get guys from the floor to the weight room, which is across the parking lot, or across the loading dock, excuse me, which is an amazing loading dock. It's hard to explain, not important. So I'm going back and forth, and I'm seeing all these people arriving for the game. I'm seeing all these crazy cars. I'm seeing all these like GMs and front office people, and I'm seeing like I'm seeing money, but I'm seeing influence because it's the people who are influencing decisions and also on the floor and the players. And I stood there and I looked around and I'm like, I have to leave. And it was one of those moments when I was like, I have to leave because I'm not going to be able to reach this level from where I am now. Like, first of all, never going to make $200 million. But even to make more money than I do now, I'm going to have to leave to rebrand, to relearn, whatever, to come back and to be like an executive. And also, then the second part of it, which is probably more important, is for me to get to the level of influence I wanted. I can't do it from here. I'm too far down the ladder. And so and it hit me. I'm like, I have to leave. But to exactly the point you made, it wasn't like I got to leave because it sucks or I got to leave because there's no hope. No, I got to leave to be able to come back. So, yeah, I think that's a very profound thing that you've witnessed. And hopefully that individual is doing great. And because, again, the business sucks at times. And I hope the other people have found spots and are doing really great too. But that's a perfect example of something I felt very deeply in Brooklyn a year ago.
Nice, nice. That was awesome. So I guess that leads me to another question. So both of us have worked with sport, like team sport,
Yeah.
work with like sports as a strength coach, and you also as a sports scientist. How do you deal with, I don't want to use the word, but like, how do you deal with failure? Like,
Mm.
not probably not ourselves think like we failed this job, but
Yeah.
like when we lose or like when
Yeah.
somebody else think that you failed your job. How do
Yeah.
you deal with that?
Yeah. So are you saying like either getting fired or like just things haven't gone well and so
Or
on and so
yeah,
forth.
people
They're
pointing
failing.
fingers at you.
Yeah, no, that's a hard one. So there's a couple of things to that. I think I am open to very open to external critique. I am more than happy and I can lower my ego and the whole thing and have you say to me, Dan, I think these things you could do better. Um, I yeah, I'm okay with that because I think you can again, it's all about growth, right? Not to be too cheesy with that commentary, but I just think that you like if you think you've got all the answers all the time, you can't grow. So I'm okay lowering my guard, lowering my whatever. Um, I don't. I think it's a foolhardy way to go through life needing external validation. So if so there's two sides to that. There's external validation and there's external critique for the wants of growth. So I'm okay with that. I don't need you to validate me. I'm not interested in that. I'm interested in you telling me things that will make me better potentially. Also, as I'm being critiqued, I am I am vetting and thinking through who is critiquing me or who is saying I'm a failure, right? Because if I am comfortable and I feel like I've done the best job I could within the constraints of this crazy business. So that's the first step. I should have started with that. Make sure you take care of business. You know what I'm saying? Because that's literally why you've been hired and it's why you're there. Make sure you've taken care of business. Okay, let's just consider that like it's been done. So then, as you're critiquing me or judging me and saying I failed or I'm failing, I'm evaluating if I think you can be a fair judge of that before I take that on board as something that's going to ruin my day. So, Eric, if you, who I respect highly, tells me that, and you wouldn't say it like this, but if you say, Dan, I think you failed in that, I'm gonna go, all right, it's a bit of a slap in the face from my guy, but like I respect him. I know he knows what he's talking about. I know he's coming at this from a place of respect and love and whatever. I'm gonna take that. It's probably gonna upset me, but I'm gonna in a way of feeling bad. If you're someone who hasn't been in the weight room, if you're someone who has never walked these paths, if you're someone who I don't believe can evaluate this, you're just making a snap judgment for whatever reason. I'm going to listen to what you say because I'm a respectful guy, but I'm going to move on with my day because like your judgment means nothing to me. You know what I'm saying? I was interviewed for an NBA job a decade ago, and one of the questions that came up was it was in a major city, which they all are, but it was in one of the big ones. And one of the questions that came up was, in this city, we're in a fishbowl. How do you feel about managing? It was for an S&C position, managing working in a fishbowl. And I said to them, the only problem with the fishbowl is if you look out. If you're just doing your thing, and you're not worried about people staring in at you, questioning you, judging you, then it isn't a problem. It's when you look out and you're looking for validation, or you're like spending too much time on here on the phone, like digging through what they say. Human nature, it's going to happen. But if it's too much of that stuff, it's going to crush you. So how I deal with failure, um, you need people who love you and care about you to kind of get you through it. Tell you you're great, love on you a little bit, human nature. You need people who care about you, who are honest with you, and maybe help you understand why you possibly failed. But, and then the third part is that, to me, the most important part is that you need to know what happened so you can learn from it. So if it's not in your control, you need to kind of go, all right, well, now I know the landscape. Now I know what's happening. Now I can try and look for flags before they happen. If it's in your control, what did you do wrong? But again, you got to evaluate who's telling you that. The other thing I'll say as an end note is if you are seeking external validation or you're deeply wounded by what these people are saying, first of all, you probably shouldn't be in the profession because thin skin is not going to get you anywhere. But secondly, probably deep down, you know that you did screw up. You know that you missed something. You know you were dogging it. You know you didn't bring your best to the table. Because not every day is going to be your best day. But if you can bring the best you can every single day, you'll be fine, right? So for me, I throw myself heart, soul into every job I've had. I'm not saying I had the greatest days all the time, but every one I've walked away from, I know that I did the best job I could as a collective body of work. So if you tell me I failed, I don't believe you. Unless I respect you, unless I know you coming from a place where I can go, now his evaluation is incredibly important. So shut up, put your ego aside and learn from this guy or this lady because they know what they're talking about. So again, a bit of a long answer, but that's how I deal with it. Human emotions are going to make you feel shitty. That's just the way it is. You have to find your own way to work through that. But what comes from it is the important part.
Nice, nice. I love it. I love it. So I guess as a growing strength coach like me or like
Mm.
other growing strength coach, there's actually a lot of like resources. Shout out to like Strength Coach Network, all those stuff. They
Yeah,
want to make the industry better. They want to help like young coaches get
yeah,
hired. But as both of us know, like it's hard. Like young coaches have like big dreams. So you personally gone through those paths.
yeah.
So I guess my question is, how do you prepare yourself, or how do like young practitioners prepare themselves to be able to like uh go through interview and take those jobs and skill wise able to handle those jobs?
Yeah, no, that's a great point. Okay, this is probably gonna be a long one too, E. Let me think this through how I'm going to get tackle this because there's a lot of parts to this. I
You're
think
good. You're good.
the way so when I was trying to get a job in the NBA or even in Power Five college, I was working at well, actually let me backtrack. I was a personal trainer who wanted to work in college. That's where this whole thing started. Once I'd kind of figured out what I wanted to do. So basically, I've always worked at the rate and the style, and I've carried myself of the job I want to get, if that makes sense. So obviously, I was dealing with general population clients at the gym, as well as recreational athletes and so on. But the way that I organized workouts, the way that I thought through the process, the way that I tried to be a level above what was perceived as normal personal training at the time made me already in a mindset and a strategy and a whatever it might be of being a strength coach. Now, I wasn't working with multiple teams in massive groups and things like that. That was a learning curve. But in terms of the way I carried myself, the type of work I was doing and how I spoke and what I did, I was already trying to operate like that. So it was a smoother transition. When I was trying to go from college to the pros, it was the same thing. How I ran the Georgia Tech men's basketball performance program was exactly how I operated. Now, I was a strength coach with sports science. I was only sports science in the NBA. but I ran it like a pro program, which I can get into that. And you know, like there's a little bit of a difference. The way that I trained the guys on a more individual level, I operated more like a performance director than a single strength coach. So I oversaw myself and interns. So I didn't run a department, but I linked in with psych and medicine, obviously, and nutrition, and I linked us all together. And I built the network that was kind of back and forth, and I troubleshot, and I was involved in recruiting players at the time, and I was involved in every aspect of it, which is more of a high performance model. So I brought that to Tech, ended up being very successful. As you know, we won the ACC championship during the COVID year, but more importantly, we developed guys through it. So I was already working at a rate and in a style that fit the next job up. It also, funnily enough, was extremely successful in the job that I had. So the first thing I would say is live it before you get it. You know what I mean? The second thing I would say is, and this kind of goes back to what I said before, is what gets you the interview is who you know. Also, likely what gets you sort of through the door is who you know at the end of the day. So let's just phrase it like this. What gets you in the building is who you know. What keeps you in the building is what you know. So if you get a job by virtue of just knowing the right people, which we'll get to in a second, that's great. Kudos to you, because that's really what moves the world forward, unfortunately. You'll be exposed extremely quickly if you don't know what you're talking about and can't do a good job. Like the people around you who got the job better really love you because you're going to be gone fast, fast. And more importantly, particularly the higher levels you go up, the athletes have more influence. They may think you're cool. They also know you suck. They will fire you. And if the athletes fire you, then you will literally get fired because you've lost the locker room at that point. So let's unpack that a little bit. So first of all, I think you should dress, talk, act, and work for the job that you want because it will also affect positively the job that you have. One, that's the keeping the main thing, doing a good job thing. Two, which really is the most important thing, you have to have a deep and diverse network. Have to, because that network will let you know where the jobs are opening up. Because often, as you know, they're not posted or they're posted and already taken. So they'll let you know what's up. They will let you know the rhythm and flow of the industry. They will be aspects of your references when you're on your resume. They will be people that will keep your tools sharp because they'll be people that you'll do this with and bounce ideas off. But it has to be big, it has to be diverse. You can't know four people. Okay. Cross sports, cross disciplines, cross all of it. My references at one point were strength and conditioning coaches, sports medicine people, psychologists, sports technology people, and I would rotate them like you and I talked about at one point for whatever my resume for whatever job I wanted. And you know, I had a couple of heavy hitters because I was fortunate enough in the middle part of my early career to have met some influential people who respected what I did. So you have to have a network. You have to, because there's this sort of like adage about if you're really good, they'll find you. No, they won't. They won't find you. It's too saturated an industry. There's too much of it going on. And like I said, the people who tend to hire you don't even know where to look. They just hire their friends or they hire their like like he worked with me before, I'm going to hire him. And it may work. I'm not saying it doesn't work, but that they go for their small thing. So you've got to have this massive network. So you've got to make sure that you have this big network. Then the last part of it, which is I think what you're extremely good at yourself, is constantly keep moving the goalposts and keep getting better in different areas because your value as a practitioner is also your diverse ability to train different athletes, use different strategies in strength and conditioning, implement technology in a way that is also applicable to what you're doing and not just some research-based thing. Although I'm pretty confident you could run a research project if you wanted to. So I think diversity of your skill set is going to be important too. But yeah, so like I said, who you know gets you in the door. What you know keeps you in there. So just keep focusing on those things.
Great. I think another part of this question would be like, uh, at the same time, while like strength coaches chasing the dream, chasing the
Yeah.
goal, oftentimes we heard a lot of like story that strength coaches trying to handle their job, trying to chasing their dream, but they couldn't take care of family.
Yeah.
So how do you manage to take care of like both?
Okay, that's a doozy. So I forget. I think the national divorce rate is like over 50%. Someone once told me for coaches, and I think it was specifically like team coaches, not like strength coaches, but for coaches in general, it's like ridiculously high. I'll say 70%. I can't remember if it's that high, but it's like above the national average. If you look across the industry, there are case studies of this sounds mean. I don't mean to sound mean, but like broken families. So like people who don't live with each other, people who had to grow up from their kids, divorces, remarriages, all that kind of stuff. Um, it's a really bad industry for that. Um, so it's really hard to answer the question. I think there's a few things I think that I could probably fall back on with this to answer this question is we have to remember in chasing our dreams and working our dreams when we have them, like me in the NBA. I've wanted to be in the NBA since I was 13 years old. When I first started playing basketball, I wanted to play, obviously. I was a British kid from the north of England who wanted to be in the NBA, and I did it, right? So not only did I chase it, but I made my dream. You have to remember you're asking a lot of people to sacrifice for you to get there. Because we often talk about the personal sacrifice of like missing holidays and this, and it's all true. It's all true. You're also asking your wife and kids to allow you to do this. And by allow you, I mean you're not going to be around a lot. You and I both know, because we're not from this country, we've had to ask our extended families to sacrifice time with us, growing up with us, enjoying our successes, right? So this goes back to being real, I think. So you have to know that you're doing that. If you don't acknowledge the fact that you're asking people to sacrifice for you, then you're missing a whole piece of this puzzle. So that's part of it, I think, is an acknowledgement of that. For all of us, there is this element in our pursuit of our dreams and in living our dreams where you have to kind of self-audit and say, is this still worth it? Which kind of goes back to your thing about losing the sort of luster and losing the motivation. So on top of that, it's like, is the strain on my marriage or my relationships? I'm using marriage because I'm married, but my relationships, friends, weddings, birthday parties, whatever. Is the strain on my relationships? Is the negative bit that comes from this still worth it? And because if you don't take that moment and pause, and you just because what happens is you go right into the off season, which becomes the preseason, which becomes the next season, which becomes the postseason, and it keeps coming, and it's amazing, and it's intoxicating, and it's some of the best highs you'll ever have. But in the meantime, your kids are 13, your kids are 14, your kids are 15. If you're still okay with that, and probably more importantly, if they're still okay with it, then you're okay. But I think you have to have open communication with the people that you're around. You have to have a deep acknowledgement of their sacrifice, like respect the sacrifice that they're making, and then audit if it is still worth it. So using me particularly, because obviously this podcast is about me and about my experiences, I knew going into my third year it was no longer worth it. And I'm in the NBA. I'm on charter planes. I'm working with the best athletes in the world from a basketball perspective. We're doing some of the most interesting work in the NBA in different ways. The people I work with were phenomenal, just unbelievable practitioners who I adore and will forever. And it was starting to not be worth it. Why wasn't it worth it? Why wasn't it worth it? That's the high life. Because the strain on my relationships was starting to be, and nothing bad was happening. My kids became teenagers, different part of their life. My wife's having to deal with certain things with them that she needs me to be around for. My kids, it was no longer like, oh, daddy, can we get ice cream and go to the park? It was like, I really wish you were here because I have some things I want to talk to you about. It's like an emotional level. Is it worth it for a point where on the flip side, I'm in Brooklyn telling you now, I can't grow out of here anymore professionally. So all that's going to happen is I'm going to run it back next year. And in doing so, I haven't acknowledged the sacrifice my family's making. So be honest about their sacrifice, be respectful to them, self-audit, probably on an annual basis So then it gets back to like, okay, but then what happens when you go, I don't think I want to do this anymore, or I'm putting my relationships too much at stress. That goes back into you need to be very practical about this job because it may run out of time for you or you may get fired. And if you've got blinkers on and you're not looking for other opportunities and networking and looking for, opportunities elsewhere, and I'm not saying you're trying to leave the moment you get a job, but you also need to know what the hell else is out there. So when you do get fired or you do have to pivot or something happens that's unexpected, you're not like, well, shit, all I do, I'm a strength coach. It's not like, you're so much more than that. But if you haven't looked around you and understood it, when you have to make a pivot because you've been told to or you've been asked to by someone you love, you don't know what to do. So I knew what to do because I was working with these people beforehand loosely. I talked to people on the West Coast that were in startups, that were looking for people that could potentially, I could fill a role there. So I already kind of knew what I could potentially do. It wasn't necessarily like set in stone. Um, and I think that's the best way to do it. Now, will it mean you're successful and keep your relate? That's for you. That's time. That's whatever. But yeah, I think you have to acknowledge what they're going through too, and then, like I said, be ready to kind of suck it up and make that decision. But also, like I said, I think if you are aware of these different advantages around you, you don't have to take a career pivot where you then become resentful. Because that's the other part of it. That's another real breakup. It's like I left the NFL for you. It's not how it works, bro. Like you left for us. You left for us. You just didn't make the right pivot because you didn't build it in. You just were head down the whole time, you know? And it doesn't mean you don't keep the main thing the main thing. It's just part of growth and curiosity and people you meet. And then all of a sudden you're like, I could do that. Maybe I could go do that for a couple. Maybe I go teach at university for a couple of years, keep my hand in play, stay networked in, so I can go back because like my guy E said, I can leave, but I can come back. So it's hard to say because it's different for everybody, but the industry is a case study on breaking of relationships. It's actually brutal when you go through it. It's kind of sad when you go through it. I'm lucky enough where I have an unbelievable wife and unbelievable kids who are super supportive of everything that I've done. But I hopefully was respectful enough back to them to know what they were going through, and it all kind of came at the right time in the right place. So yeah, it's a tough one. It's a tough one.
No, it's good. I definitely feel like you are one of the like greatest person I know that
Oh, thanks, E. I appreciate that, bro.
that every time we talk, you kind of mention something about your family. So I feel like you kind of take care of that. I don't know, but whenever I listen or whenever we talk, you kind of mention that. So I feel like that's probably one of the I think that's probably one of the reason like we are so good and
Yeah,
I respect you so much is because
I
of that.
appreciate it. Yeah, I appreciate it. It like I don't want to paint a picture of perfect husband, perfect father either, because I'm neither of those two things. But I try and work as hard as that. I try and work at hard at that as I do at my career development. I do it's just I mean, anybody that has kids will tell you, like, I have 4.5 years before my kids are in college, and it will never be the same again. Because as you know, we left home, we
Yeah.
left
Yeah.
countries. It'll never be the same again. The thing I'm most proud of in my life is my marriage, because I mean, I've been married for 20 something years. I'm heading towards 30 years now. And it's time and energy and things we built together, shared experiences, good, bad, and ugly. So to give it all up would be I don't even know the right word. I mean, it would just be like, it's not even a misstep. It would be just a travesty, really. So yeah, thank you. I appreciate you saying that. That's very kind of you.
Nice, nice. So I guess the last part of this podcast I want to talk about is like you've been in this industry for so long.
Mhm.
So like from a strength coach to sports scientist, and you also work with a lot of technology right now.
Yeah,
Like, what do you think like the next thing for performance world?
yeah. I think you and I have talked about this separately, I think too. What is already happening um, is technology is getting smaller, easier, and faster. This also means the market is overly saturated and there's tons of snake oilsmen. We'll move on from that because that's a different discussion. Because of that, the days of clunky things and having athletes have to like put stuff on them is becoming less and less and less. So the future of technologies basically are going to be, and the ones that win, I should say, that win the space and become very prevalent, are the ones that are minimally intrusive to athletes. They just compete. They just lift. They just do things, right? Hawkeye technology is a optical tracking system that is prevalent across sports. It's big in the NBA right now. Is the touch point for it. I just heard it's in Formula One. Okay, optical tracking. Um, Things in racks like Perch is a good example. Perch, good or bad, you can argue either way. It doesn't really matter. I like those guys. I think they do a really good job. But the point is, you just hit a button and move, right? That type of technologies, the low intrusive, you just do your job and are being assessed at the same time, are going to get better and better and better and be more and more present. So there's a knock on them now because it's like, oh, it's just tons of data. It's just so much data. What do we do with all of it? Oh, it's dirty data. It's not really very accurate. Sure. All of that is a fine critique. It's coming. It's coming either way. It's in my phone. It's in veterinarian science. The military's using it. It's coming, buddy. So like my whole thing with it is you can just sit there and be like, well, it's not good enough yet. Great, it's coming. So for me, it's be aware of it, know how to evaluate it, know how to sort of like vet it and so on, try and get rid of the snake oil from it. So that's the first thing is that you're going to start seeing, and we already are, technologies that are, again, minimally intrusive, things that athletes just basically perform their activities in. What comes from them is massive amounts of data, right? That's the other problem because then traditional ways of handling data, storing data, cleaning data, and working with data will start to be less relevant or less useful because the data sets are massive. So what comes in? AI, blah, right? So AI is a buzzword. The people I work with kind of laugh about that a little bit because AI is a catch-all for certain things. But basically, machine learning and deep learning, which is part of what is AI, massive data sets, um, connecting data sets to answer questions, kind of like a ChatGPT type of activity, which is an AI-based platform, obviously for asking questions and doing work from. That's what's coming because you've got the two things going on here. You've got the technologies that allow you to collect massive data in a way where athletes aren't bothered and pestered, so they're more apt to do it. But then you're going to need the second part of it is how do you deal with the big data, which is going to be this machine learning kind of approach, because statistical methodologies of the past won't be as helpful because the data sets are too big or just too different. So I think that's the future. I think the future is going to be, and it will impact everybody: weight rooms, coaches, sports scientists, obviously, data people. There'll be more engineers around, from a data engineering and a sort of a bioengineering perspective, because they're going to be the ones that kind of understand how to wrangle this stuff and make decisions around it. So what you'll start to see being hired in professional teams are people who have engineers as titles, as opposed to biomech and all that kind of stuff. So to me, it's already kind of here, and I know you see it too. Um, it's just going to be more and more and more present. And more, like I said, ChatGPT is a good example because ChatGPT was this curious thing that broke out a couple of years ago. And now my kids can pull it up at school, and there's rules in school about how that you can't use it. So 2 or 3 years ago, you could be like, I'm not doing that. That's not good, but it's here. Optical tracking, 3D pose estimation stuff that's coming into in sports. Oh, there's all kinds of problems with it. Yep. You know what? It's in every major sport right now. So what are you going to do? Are you going to really get mad at it? There's this knock on Hawkeye, for example, which is getting better because it rolled out in the NBA and had a really rough rollout for a bunch of reasons. And I've heard a lot from different people. It's just not helpful. It's not useful right now. It's the largest data set on elite male basketball players from a 3D pose, which potentially could be biomechanics in the world, right now. So, like, is it difficult to work with and problematic? Absolutely. Is it useless? That's a bold statement because there's no data set like it. Will it be better in 10 years? Absolutely. So I think to answer your question, I think it's these technologies that are basically not involving athletes doing anything and just tracking them in whatever the way may be without them having to like do a whole lot, even wear something. And then the other thing is going to be anybody, people who come up behind us who are strength coaches, obviously sports scientists, and these engineers, they're going to have to be schooled and educated in data and data in different ways in the past. You can't just go and get your typical like data science degree. Or if you do, the data science degree will have machine learning and have deep learning kind of in it because that's what is happening in the world today. So it'll just come to our industry as well.
Nice. Last question before I let you go.
Sure.
So, like you mentioned, AI, and basically AI can do like everything we can do. They can come up with
Yeah.
better program we can
Yeah.
program, like better strength training program, better performance training program. They can
Yeah.
write R or Python better than us.
Yeah.
So, as like us practitioner, sports scientists, strength coaches, how like how can we deal with that, or how can we prepare
Yeah. No, it's
for
great.
that?
So this is my favorite question of the night, and there were some good ones. Art and science. Everybody always talks about is it art, is it art and science. The reason that's even a conversation is because they both go hand in hand. Right now, and probably for a long period of time, uh, AI type engines are only as good as the information that you put in it because you teach it, right? It's also based on prompting. Now, granted, 10 years from now, there'll be some really good S&C AI engines to produce programs and that you could feed information in about injury prevention or whatever your thing is, right? But in the short term, as we're building them, it's going to take smart people who artfully can curate the right information to feed into that thing, right? So that's cool because that's a cool project because the stuff that you're going to get back from it is going to be amazing. Then you've got, okay, well, now I have this machine which can create the greatest ACL prevention program. That machine cannot deal with a cranky athlete at 8 a.m. who has not eaten breakfast, is mad at coach, and just broke up with his girlfriend. Who does that is the talented and artful individual who can take this amazing program and input it into the day's training session. Because something else will happen too, because they will have a bad back, or coach will come and grab them for 5 minutes, or you pick it. And then what do you do? Go back to ChatGPT or Strength Coach GPT? Nope. You use your own experience and your own influence. Because if you think about it right now, I could take Adam Petway, who is an unbelievable strength coach, his program, and I could bring it in the weight room tomorrow to work with our pit crew members. I can't do it like Adam Petway does it. And I don't know if I am anymore, but I was a pretty good strength coach. I could not do it like Adam could do it because it's his program, right? But I can take a creative program and I can implement it. Also, Adam isn't there. So what happens when it doesn't work properly? Because some things come up. So there's always going to be a need for people to artfully take these different technologies, these ideologies, these insights, and implement them. The application of all of this stuff is always going to be present. If you think about it like in the science and medical field, there's so much advances in technology. There's so much advances in chemistry and biology and understanding in the medical field, but we still have nurses. I mean, they're the angels of the medical field. We still have doctors. There are yet to be robots that fully do surgeries on humans. Now, there may be in the future, sure. But again, someone has to oversee that stuff. Someone has to program that stuff. Someone has to troubleshoot that stuff. There'll always be a need for us in some ways because it becomes a incredibly useful tool. And again, if you embrace it now, then you're already ahead of it and you will not be cast aside because technology's come in because it's coming anyway. But they can create programs and insights and they can answer questions for you really, really quickly and allow you to do your job. But they can't deal with the artful part of it because it's not what it's created for.
Nice, nice, nice. That's awesome. So before I let you go,
Yeah,
um, I know you post a lot of like conversation with yourself on LinkedIn and
yeah.
uh Instagram. and actually watch. I'm not gonna say I watch all of it, but I
You
actually
just fine.
listen to
Yeah.
a lot of it, and it's really awesome. And I th
Yeah.
personally think actually a lot of it is going to help like practitioner like me or like young strength coaches just come out of school. That's
Thank
going
you.
to help them grow. So where can they find those stuff?
Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, a little project of mine that I've kind of like really dived into. So basically, you can find me on LinkedIn, Dr. Daniel Taylor. LinkedIn searches are easy. Like you said, I'm with my kids a lot more now, and they have tons of extracurricular activities. So, what Eric's talking about is me sitting in my car, basically doing this to myself, like a small version of this, and then posting it to help people. My Instagram account is DT underscore worldwide, which I still think is funny. The O of worldwide is a zero. That's the only thing because someone else had the DT worldwide. So DT underscore worldwide with a zero, and then Dr. Daniel Taylor in LinkedIn are the two easiest ways. And I'm easy to get hold of, and I respond to pretty much anybody that tries to get hold of me. So I'm more than happy to try and help at this point in my career.
Nice.